Well, looky what followed me home. This was gifted to me last week, and I brought it home, I think it was Thursday, maybe Wednesday, don't remember now. Anyway, this is a cool 1959 Zenith plastic cabinet radio. It's a 7-tube AM and FM radio. So we have your FM at the top of the scale and your AM at the bottom. It has AM automatic frequency control and FM. It's a cool radio. This radio has no cracks. The cabinet is in excellent shape. It'll polish up really nicely. Here is the sticker for it. Make sure you get a good chance to see it. And it's model L724. And I am going to scan what's left of that sticker and see if I can't Photoshop to make the rest of it look good so I can make duplicate sticker for it. Anyway, it's got a fairly simple plain dial, and it has the speaker cloth is in nice shape, and I think that's actually original. And I have some speaker cloth that's very similar to this that I put on a Watterson radio a couple of years ago, and I still have some left, but I don't need to replace this. It's in good shape. So I haven't cleaned it up yet. I've done nothing with it. I got it the way you see it. I love the colors. I love the muted colors. The ivory and the tan looks real nice to me. I'm going to turn it on and see how we do. Like I said, it's a 7-tube radio. 7 tubes, not that uncommon for a well-made FM radio. They'll share some IFs. They'll share the IF stuff, and it's probably got it might even have a limiter. And the way the FM works will be an older way of setting it up. Let's see here. So what are we on, AM or FM?
In the role of
okay, that's
Secretary
FM.
of Defense, National Security.
Doggone lights are a pain in the butt. Here we go.
General Dynamics. And you got the whole issue, which Rich may probably disagree
Boy, it has a
with,
nice
about
sound,
civilian
doesn't it?
control of the military. I think sometimes
There is no tone control on this, but Zenith radios up until the late 60s had very nice sound. Even their earlier solid state ones had great sound. Let's check it out.
All right.
Well, so one thing here
Spread the love like fire, hope will fall like rain.
The Beatles, of course, they're 8 days a week on every Bible open.
Dealer or check out Toyota.com.
So FM comes in fantastic. No hum from the radio itself. My TV is still on, and I've got one LED light on that caused a little bit of on-station buzzing, but nothing serious. Let's try AM. Let's see how we do. Now remember, on the old FM, the earlier FMs, you would tune it on FM, and then you would set it to automatic frequency control, and it would keep it centered on the signal. Let's do an AM here. And we're going to get a little more noise from things like the TV now.
This in the New Testament. So
that wall wart to the right against the wall was the real culprit here. That thing goes to one of my little gooseneck LEDs, and they make one heck of a noise. It's got a nice sound, though. So very nice radio. I'm going to enjoy using it. Actually, I'm putting this one in my shop, and I'm going to listen to this radio all the time. I'm not even going to restore it, because I'll listen to it every day. I'll get to know its little sounds, and if it starts acting funny, I'll go ahead and recap it then. But for right now, I think it's going to be okay. And this is very much like an old Stromberg Carlson TV I have from the late 40s. The reason that this radio has never been restored or recapped or anything. In fact, the guy that brought it to me said that it had been used virtually every day since it was new. He said as far as he knows, his mom and dad they had it on a table in their living room, and they listened to this radio every single day. They listened to KSL, which is a Salt Lake City station. And I firmly believe that radios that are played all the time last longer and need less maintenance than radios that are only played sometimes. That's why I'm always encouraging people to use your radios a lot. Same thing is true for record players, because the rubber parts get hard if they don't get used. But for now, I think I'm just going to enjoy the thing. I'll put on my favorite country and western station, KSOP 1370 in Salt Lake City, and that way I can hear some vintage country tunes. You know, I could go right now for a little bit of Conway Twitty or something like that, and you know, I can always listen to a Loretta Lynn song. So I'm going to see if I can't find 1370. That's a nice song though too. There we go. I like that. That's nice.
Back when you have a defense.
There we go. Now that's KSOP 1370, Salt Lake City. So with that, I'll go ahead and close this video. I wired in the line cord, and I connected it through a thermistor to that terminal strip, and I've run that over to the switch. I also installed a couple of Y2 safety capacitors. So I think this thing is all ready now to be plugged in. We're going to give it a shot. What do you think? Should we try it? I don't know. I'm a little nervous. I put a lot of work in this radio, but I got to try it sometime, so I guess now is as good as any. When I first started the RCA 811K, I powered it up to do just a real quick rundown with my Variac, look at current draw, whether or not I got any reception, any sound at all or not. And, it's just a basic power-up. Well, I had the chassis out, so I didn't. This has a really short speaker cable, cable harness down to the speakers, and the chassis was out. So I basically gator wired the speaker connections to the speaker. There's a connector on the speaker. It's a 4-pin connector, and then there, of course, there's a socket on the radio at the end of a short wire harness. When I went to put this back together last night, I discovered that this socket does not really fit onto this plug, and I haven't been able to figure out why they would be assembled that way. They both look original, and I don't know what has happened here. But when I got the radio, this was not plugged. At least I don't think it was. I didn't take any pictures when I first brought it in, but when I got the radio, it couldn't have been plugged because they simply do not fit. So what I'm doing right now is I have a very, very short supply of these 6-pin sockets with wiring harness on them, and I have a couple of these 6-pin plugs. So what I'm going to do is mount this plug onto here, onto this speaker, just like the other one was mounted. And then I'll wire this socket up to the radio, and I'll be able to, use this as the connector for the speaker. I'll have to do some research on the 811K and sort out if this is the original plug-in socket. It's hard for me to imagine that it's not, because when I took it apart, the original wires sure looked like they were originally soldered. But for the life of me, I cannot figure out what it is the distance between the widely separated pins and the narrowly separated pins is too great on the plug. And so, the holes are closer together on the socket. And you can see the witness marks where I kind of scraped it a bit, right above that upper left-hand hole. That was the end of the pin making that scraping. The same thing with the lower right one. You see that witness mark. I was trying to plug this in, and they just plain weren't going together. And I don't I don't quite get it, but I'll have to sort it out. Perhaps someone changed it at some time, but I don't know why they would have changed it to one that didn't fit. And I could swear the owner said this thing worked when he brought it to me, and I confirmed that when I did my testing, but I don't know how he would have known it worked unless the plugs fit together. So if you know something I don't know about these plugs, please let me know pretty quick, because I'm going to be changing this thing. But otherwise, I guess this is going to be a mystery to me. All right, I'll get back to work now. All right, I have the old RCA 811K all hooked up. The tuner section is all set up and I think pretty well finished. Got the speaker cabling hooked up, speaker connectors installed. I even have the tuning eye, which I'm pretty sure is dead, connected. Just at least I can draw the current from it and get a good current reading on the ammeter on the Variac. I'm going to bring it up, and you will see it as I see it. So whatever happens, happens, guys. If it catches fire and burns, well, I'm going to be like Buzz, and I want this video to be shown anyway. So my wife has instructions. So we are going to set it up. I'm going to turn the camera a little bit to take a better look at the Variac. There we go. I'll move that loop antenna so you can see the ammeter. Okay. Try to make this as good as possible. All right, I'm going to turn on the isolation transformer and the Variac. The transformer is hot. Variac is on. All right, so I'll make sure the radio is on. Radio is on. Volume is all the way up. Let's see what happens, guys. All right, first things first, I'm going to start to bring up the voltage. I'll bring it up to about 50 or 60 volts right from the beginning. By the way, I already did a short test without the rectifier, so it's got a 5T4 rectifier. I did a shorts test without the rectifier in place to make sure there was no shorts in any of the filament wiring or anything like that. I have light bulbs, so I know that the filament winding is okay. I'm not sure about the 5 volt until I get her going, because I had the rectifier out. But no shorts. With the rectifier out, it was pulling about, I don't know, maybe a 0.2 amp, something really tiny. Not much. So now let's go ahead. We're at about 50 volts, or actually 45 volts. Bring it up to 60. Current is still nice and low, below, it's maybe 0.1 amp. Let it sit for just a minute or so at 60. Kind of get those electrolytics awakened. Okay, let's bump it up to about 70 volts. 70 volts. Current is at 0.4 amps. This light bulb was just touching the chassis, so see if we can't keep that happening. Alright, we're at 70 volts and we're at about 0.4 amps. Let's go up to, let's say, 80 volts. Usually don't get anything between until you get around minimum of about 90 volts. The earliest I ever had a radio come online was about 75 volts. That totally blew me away. Okay, so I have high voltage because I'm hearing buzzing from the speaker, and I'm at 81 volts. That's interesting. Let's see if I get anything. Well, the tuner is having an effect. Not receiving anything, so the oscillator is probably not running yet. Let's bump her up to 90 volts. Okay, that sound is getting louder. Man, I hear the whisperings of a station. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to cheat a little bit and grab a hold of the antenna and see if that does anything. Hey, I hear churchy music. I hear churchy music, reminding me that it's Sunday. Hear that organ? Oh, check that out, guys.
Green Bay, which quite possibly could happen, and then Indianapolis shows up and wins on Monday night against the Jets. That means you'll have 3 teams that will be physical. Ask Tom Brady, and they'll tell you. And then I do think on the other side, the Jets had that signature offensive game since week 2 on the road at Buffalo. This would be a very...
That's interesting. So I'm not quite sure why that's happening. I suspect it has something to do with the automatic volume control, because when I get on station really strong, it'll come on loud for a second and then fade, and then it kind of does that little thing, that pulsating deal. So I'll look at the automatic volume control, also look at the automatic frequency control, because that might be causing some hunting too. I don't know. I just don't know enough about it. I'll also look at the 6H6, which is the detector and AVC tube, and I've got some things to look at. But what I do know, transformer is good. I got high voltage. The IFs are working. The oscillator's working. You know, all the important things, the essentials are working. I don't have any shorts. Even at, let me put her up to, just for the hell of it, let me put it up to 110 volts. I'll put it up to 117 volts. There we go. Well, I've got a thermistor in it, so I'm going to put it up to about 120. That should give me about 115 on the other side of the thermistor. At 120 volts, I am pulling just a hair over 1 amp. This is an 11-tube radio with dual 6F6s, so 1 amp does not make me cry. That doesn't sound bad at all. I can live with 1 amp. Now, of course, I'll check voltages and all that later, but what I really wanted was to see if everything was working. Now, it might be that I was at a low voltage that it was pulsating, so I didn't think about that. I'll check that now. Let me put on a glove, because it seems like when I touch it, it causes it to lose volume.
Has been on this for today, and they're a big underdog.
Hey, check that out. When I got the voltage up where it's supposed to be, I don't get that cutting out anymore. Very nice. Getting a lot of stations, but there's a lot of bleed over from station to station, so I'll have some tweaking to do in the alignment. And they're all kind of packed in one area of the tuning range too. The sound is good. I don't hear any hum that's coming from the radio. The noise I heard is coming from my lights and other stuff. And it's a bit of a small fail with the LED lights, because they generate a lot of noise too. I'm just going to have to learn to live with the noise, I guess, or get some incandescents as auxiliary lights for when I'm doing this kind of work. You know, the old technology in so many ways was superior to the new crap that's being made. Yeah, I know we're saving energy and all that. I learned a couple things today. I learned that at roughly 117 volts on the downstream side of the thermistor, I have good radio operation. Of course, you get up. It started to play at 80 volts, but it must have been that one of the tubes was kicking in and out. Maybe the oscillator would stop functioning, as it was not quite enough voltage there. Who knows? Anyway, but when I got her up to 117, actually 120 volts on the Variac voltmeter, which is around 117 in the radio, it seemed to function just fine. I have a lot of alignment to do. I have some other miscellaneous things to do, nothing serious. Of course, the eye tube is dead. I knew that going in, so that's no big deal. I am going to do another check on all the tubes. I'll put stickers on them so that I don't have to check a second time. I wrote notes when I did the tube test, but I also tested them on a tube tester that has since failed in a serious way. So perhaps that tube tester may have been in question. So I'll just go ahead and test all the tubes. And then, since I know the radio functions, what I'm going to do now is begin installing the electric tuning stuff and the dial, and getting all that stuff on. I wouldn't want to do that until I knew for sure that the radio was going to work, because otherwise I'd be taking it all off again if I had to troubleshoot. So great, I got the green light to put the tuning motor on, to put that wiring harness that I built on, to put that big assembly with the tuning dial on. All of those things can be done. I think that we're in good shape today. I'm really pleased with where it's at. So I'm going to end this particular segment right now, and I will tune you in when I get some work done. Do you remember when I said that the speaker plug did not mate with the socket that was mounted on this wire harness from the radio? And that I could not figure out why in the world they would be different, because they both looked very original. Well, you've seen the radio play, because I just showed you the first power-up. And the smart guys among you were saying, wait a minute, how come it's playing if the speaker cables didn't work? Well, if you looked real close in the video, you saw this patch cable. Yep, this patch cable was made originally by RCA for this radio. And it should have occurred to me, because when I was working on this thing, I should have looked. I know where the speaker board mounts. I know where the speaker sits in the radio. I know where the chassis sits. And there's no way in hell this little short cord right here was going to reach from the chassis to the speaker plug. So it should have occurred to me. It was late, and I was tired, and I probably hadn't had enough candy corn and peanuts, that it didn't occur to me that, oh, there's got to be a cord between them. And since I hadn't seen a cord in the boxes for the RCA stuff that I have, it never occurred to me to go grab the cord. Well, when I started thinking, this morning I started thinking about it, and wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And so I got on the internet, and I looked at where the chassis mounts, and I looked at where the speaker mounts, just to make sure I remembered it right. And sure enough, they were far enough apart that there had to be a cord. So I went out to the storage area, and I started digging through, and lo and behold, sitting right behind the Scott 800B chassis, which is the next one on the bench here, was a little baggie labeled RCA 811K speaker connector cord. I wrote it. I don't know what the heck, why I didn't remember writing it, but you know, sometimes that happens. You get to be an old fart, and the brain starts to lose little connections, and this was one of them. I'm just glad that I was able to get to the right point in the end, connected it up, and you saw the radio playing, so that's a nice end to a really kind of dopey story. But it's working now, and I don't have to worry about building anything. And by the way, here's another thing. It just occurred to me now. See, the brain is slow in old farts. I have an RCA 812K, and I have an RCA 816K, and I should have just gone in there, and those radios are really easy for me to get to, and looked behind in those and saw what the heck was going on there. Sometimes you take the long way home. All right, I'll get back to work now. I think I'll go ahead and put that radio right there above my computer at my bench. I think that'll have a nice sound up there, and it'll be out of the way. Nothing will happen to it. And when I'm sitting here hammering away at the computer, I can just reach up and turn on a little country tunes. Yeah, I think that'll work out perfectly. All right, well, I'll let you go for now. I think that's a wrap on this video. I'll get back to work now. This is Michael from Salt Lake City. That's all for now.
Hey kid, here's a little heads up for you. I wouldn't want you to have any nasty surprises, you know?